The great artist Pablo Picasso once said, "Good artists copy, great artists steal." Although when he said that, I don't think he was referring to the recent deluge of blatant rip-off cartoon films and programs. I mean, the very best cartoon artists take inspiration from one another all the time. But some companies have just copied successful cartoons concept for concept to try and make a quick buck. Don't believe me? Well, from Chop Kick Panda to, oh my god, Goober and the Ghost Chasers. Unbelievable. It's time to pass judgment on some crimes against animation with the worst, weirdest, and most hilarious cartoon ripoffs of all time. Be warned. Some of you watching may have been born after 2007, which makes me feel so old I think my bones just crumbled into dust. But for elder millennials like me, you would have been around when something unbelievably bizarre was unleashed on Western culture. I'm talking about when legendary comedian Jerry Seinfeld, creator of Seinfeld, one of the most successful American sitcoms of all time, decided to write a kids' movie, The Bee Movie. To summarize the plot, a bee decides to sue humanity for stealing honey. Crazy idea, right? But that's not even the weirdest part, as a woman literally falls in love with a bee. The movie ends with a woman and a bee as a couple, co-running a flower shop. They showed that to children. Yeah, late 2000s was a weird time to experience. As utterly insane as it was, the movie made $293 million at the box office, and so it inspired smaller animation companies to try and cash in on the B-movie hype, which led to Plan B, a mockbuster created by Sparkplug Entertainment in 2007, the same year as B-movie's release. At least Plan B kept its plot bee-centric, with no creepy bee-human romance, instead focusing on a bee being tyrannized by a cruel honey-demanding queen bee. But while the Bee Movie was bright and colorful, Plan B has some nightmare fuel animation. The cheap budget could be seen in every single frame, but could they at least have avoided giving the characters demonic red eyes? Plan B has an impressive reputation of being one of the worst films ever made, and is indexed by the Awful Movie Wiki for this. And the reviews do not hold back. This person summed up all the problems with Plan B with, "The acting is so bad, and the animation is so bad, and everything is so bad, and oh my god." This person compared the animation to the sleep paralysis demons they see at the end of their bed at night, whilst this person felt the need to literally wash their eyes with acid after watching. This review was a lot nicer, as their only complaint about the movie was all the bees in it. While this person recommended you get psychiatric help if you found yourself enjoying Plan B. Though by far my favorite review from the movie is this: "Plan B literally ruined my life. 10 out of 10. Why do I get the feeling Jerry wrote that? Bamboozler. Jack Black is a comedy legend and voice acting sensation behind Po, the kick-ass Kung Fu Panda. Alongside Hollywood legends like Jackie Chan, Angelina Jolie, Lucy Liu, and Seth Rogen, this film was destined for greatness. The now popular franchise released its first film back in 2008, and since then, it's grossed over $1.8 billion across 3 movies, with a 4th Kung Fu Panda in the works. With such a hot panda property, it's hardly a surprise that cheap ripoffs appeared faster than a karate chop. First was the Little Panda Fighter in November 2008, less than 6 months after Kung Fu Panda, released as a direct-to-DVD movie. Though at least the creators came up with an original plot, which follows a giant panda named Pankata, who dreams of becoming a professional dancer. Though whatever budget was afforded to the scriptwriters came at a cost of decent animation. with the creepy 3D imagery looking like the animators of Kung Fu Panda, were forced to make this movie in a hostage situation. But bad as it was, even this remake isn't as offensive as the even dumber ripoff Chop Kick Panda, a 2D animated film which plagiarizes the plot of Kung Fu Panda entirely, as it follows a lazy panda who dreams of becoming a master of martial arts. What's weirder is this movie was actually released by a yoga company. Yeah, in 2011, Gaia Inc. took a break from releasing videos on yoga and meditation tutorials for a quick cash grab by releasing 3 embarrassingly bad animated movie ripoffs. The other offenders include ripping off DreamWorks' Puss in Boots with its release of Puss in Boots: A Furry Tale, as well as copying Happy Feet, the animated musical about a dancing penguin, with the even more annoying name Tappy Toes. This 2D animation follows a penguin who discovers the power of tap dancing and uses it to fight off an evil hermit crab. As you might have expected, this movie was a direct-to-DVD flop. Ultimately, Gaia Inc. struggled to stretch interest for its movies. Should have just stuck with the yoga poses. Losing my religion. When Finding Nemo was released back in 2003, more than 20 years ago, it was lauded as a masterpiece of animation. The story of an overprotective clownfish searching for his lost son wrenched hearts all over the world and filled the pockets of its producers with a staggering $940 million at the box office. Suddenly, there was a deluge of underwater, fish-focused family movie mockbusters attempting to muscle in on Finding Nemo's success. But one stood out above all the others. Not just because it copied Finding Nemo's unique naming convention, not because its characters were carbon copies of those in Finding Nemo, but because it combined the theme of fish with faith. Say hello to Finding Jesus. Finding Jesus. It may sound like I'm making this up, but I promise this is 100% real. Finding Jesus, released in the year of our Lord 2020, follows the story of 2 never-not-smiling fishy friends, Muggles and Joy, and their 3D animated adventures of telling Bible stories to a series of eternally smiling underwater creatures. The scenes are all eerily similar, cutting from one fish to another fish, all sporting the same exact expression, talking dully about biblical stories in a way that just feels wretched. With an impressively bad score of 1.1 out of 10 on IMDb, you'd think this couldn't get any worse. But it does, because director Jason Wright clearly didn't think he'd hit rock bottom with one horrifically bad mockbuster. He made another. Can you guess what it's called? It's Finding Jesus 2. It's the same freakish fish with more biblical stories, which was given a marginally better 1.2 out of 10 on IMDb. What I find really funny is that Jesus famously walked on water, so surely the last place you'd find him is at the bottom of the ocean. Chip off the old block. Animation is typically associated with children's movies, but if there's one show that puts the hard R rating in animated programming, it's South Park. Looking at a world map, you'd struggle to find a country where at least one episode of South Park isn't banned. But one of the countries with a full ban on the entire series is Kuwait, due to South Park's offensive jokes about Muslims. And thanks to this total ban on the original, Kuwait got away with releasing a complete rip-off version of the original show. Block 13 was released in 2000 and reimagined the main cast of South Park with boys of Arabic descent instead. Cartman replaced by Abood, the classic beanie switched out for a white taqiyya, a religious headdress. Kenny is replaced by Saloom, whose voice is muffled by a wraparound red keffiyeh instead of the orange hoodie. Though Kyle's trapper hat is still worn by his Block 13 substitute, Azuz, an odd winter hat to wear in the hot desert where the sitcom is set, but of course the plagiarizing animators didn't have any of their own ideas. Similar to the original South Park, the series dealt with social issues concerning Kuwait's population, but toned down a lot of the offensive humor to be more family-friendly. A notable difference being Saloom doesn't die every episode, unlike poor Kenny. The series aired on Kuwait TV from 2000 to 2002 and produced 3 seasons. Though what's truly strange about this show is that it was the first animated show produced in the ultra-socially conservative Persian Gulf region. And of all the cartoon properties, they decided to rip off one of the most offensive cartoons of all time. A twist so ironic, I think South Park's creators are actually kind of proud. Rat Race. If I ever see a rat in a restaurant's kitchen, then I'm never eating there again. But when it comes to animated movies, we put our disgust of rats aside and all enjoyed Ratatouille. The movie, released in 2007, is the story of a rat, Remy, who helps a French chef cook in the kitchen by hiding under his hat while secretly controlling him like a puppet. A smash hit at the box office, it raked in over $600 million and won an Oscar for Best Animated Film. And as I'm sure you know by now, wherever there's an animated hit movie, there's always a rip-off rat. In this case, Ratatouille. While Ratatouille was in production for several years, this animated ripoff was created in just 4 months by Brazilian animation studio Video Brinquedo. And that is reflected in the low-quality animation with a movie that only lasts half the length of the original at 45 minutes. The plot loosely follows a rat that becomes a chef and runs a restaurant. Halfway through the movie, a group of rats begin chanting "la la la" and "ha ha ha" repeatedly as the animators tried to fill time in the middle of a half-length movie, as if they didn't have the whole plot of Ratatouille to steal ideas from. You're probably scratching your head and wondering why on earth these terrible counterfeit movies are made. Well, the business model behind these low-budget ripoffs is that they're quickly put together to be released in the same month as Ratatouille and ride on its coattails. Most of the profits coming from confused grandmas accidentally buying the wrong DVD for their grandkids. And if that wasn't hard enough on the elderly, the same studio also ripped off Up, the heartfelt movie where an old man attaches thousands of balloons to his house to fly away on an adventure. But in the cheap knockoff, What's Up? Balloon to the Rescue, they don't even bother to animate multiple balloons, instead replacing it with one giant balloon. Now, you may think you're smarter than to end up watching one of these knockoff films, but the way these mockbusters often trick people into buying them is by using similar words in the title. For example, in 2012, the 3rd installment of DreamWorks' popular Madagascar series was released called Madagascar 3, Europe's Most Wanted, the follow-up to Madagascar Escape to Africa. And so too came the ripoff Life's a Jungle, Africa's Most Wanted, a film that follows the adventure of a sweater vest-wearing dog that gets lost on safari in the savannah. The use of similar words, character design, and movie posters centered on a gang of animals in Africa may just fool you if you're not paying close attention. If you search for it online, the similar wording could end up with you accidentally buying the wrong movie. So always double-check that title and the production company when renting or buying a movie. If you smell a rat, don't buy it. From Georgia with Love. The Kardashians may want to be America's most famous family, but there's not enough yellow spray tan in the world for them to be as famous as the family in the longest-running animated series of all time, The Simpsons. The light-hearted cartoon satire of American life first aired back in 1989, and after 3 decades is still on the air, now running into its 34th season. One of the most distinctive elements of The Simpsons is how the visual jokes of the opening title sequence change each episode. Can you spot the difference this time? no need to adjust the quality of the video, the graphics really are that bad. Of course, this isn't an opening episode of The Simpsons, but the Samsonadzes, a show that the creator, Shalma Ramashvili, claims is a completely original cartoon about a Georgian family that reflects Georgian humor and culture, except for the title sequence beginning in the clouds with the sound of a choir, the theme music, the characters all having yellow skin, and the opening scene featuring the iconic brown couch. Despite the creator's denial, it's obvious the Samsonadzes is a cheap knockoff of The Simpsons. The most shocking thing of all being that this terrible animation was allowed on television as late as 2009. Man, if you're watching this from Georgia, then you have my deepest condolences. But at least in some regards, the Samsonadzes tried to be original. Sort of. There are amusing differences, such as the green parrot featured prominently in the opening, who's actually the family's pet, called Koki, while the dad of the family, Gela Samsonadze, works in a bank rather than a nuclear power plant, and unlike Homer Simpson, he sports a full head of hair. It's the son, Gia, who's the bald one, unlike spiky-haired Bart. The family completed by the wife, Dodo, who has brown hair and wears heavier makeup than the tall blue-haired Marge, and the daughter, Shorena, who has a ginger bob and is more interested in boys than the book-smart Lisa, though both share the same orange dress and pearl choker. But just looking at the character designs side by side makes you appreciate The Simpsons' art direction even more, as the Samsonadzes all look like half-filled sacks of potatoes. Similar to the original show, the Samsonadzes is supposed to satirize Georgian culture, which is why there's this bizarre scene with a hard cut back to 1992, where everyone's wearing camouflage clothes and holding machine guns, which is supposed to be a reference to the Georgian Civil War that took place from 1991 to 1993. In general, The Samsonadzes is a lot more political than The Simpsons. For example, while The Simpsons has Mr. Burns as its arch-villain, the Samsonadzes villains are various Russian politicians, such as in one episode where Russian Prime Minister Vladimir Putin sends a spy into Georgia, commenting on the tense relationship between Georgia and Russia, for which the show received a lot of criticism. Which is saying something, because that meant people had to genuinely sit through this god-awful animation to pick up on it. Kudos to them. Unsurprisingly, with its poorly rendered animation, the Samsonadzes never achieved the same popularity as The Simpsons. And thankfully, this freakish yellow family were put out of their misery after only one season. Well, that's just like Homer once said.
You tried your best, and you failed miserably. The lesson is, never try.
Impostergeist. Now we've covered so many counterfeit cartoons, you're probably starting to see fakes everywhere. Just take Shrek and Fungus the Boogeyman. Surely another case of rip-offs, right? Well, actually, no. Sometimes cartoons just have similar ideas, as the 2001 movie Shrek was based off an American picture book published in 1990 about a horrible green ogre who marries an ugly princess. Meanwhile, Fungus the Boogeyman was a British children's picture book published even earlier in 1977 about a green monster that goes around scaring children. Following the success of the Shrek movies, the original Fungus book was adapted into a TV miniseries in 2004. And how the internet is full of green trolls. A completely original idea is rare in animation. Often the basic formula of shows that are popular are continuously recycled. For example, one show released in 1973 was called Goober and the Ghost Chasers. Do you already know what cartoon this show is ripping off? If not, I'll give you a set of clues. This show features a group of teen reporters for a paranormal-themed magazine. They have a large green dog called Goober. Each episode features the gang solving a ghostly mystery. Have any of you meddling kids figured it out yet? That's right, Goober is a total Scooby-Doo ripoff. But here's the twist. It was actually produced by Hanna-Barbera Productions, the same company that created the original Scooby-Doo. The original series run of Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? Began in 1969 and ran until 1978. After that, it was developed into the franchise that we know today, with multiple movies, video games, and spin-off shows. But Hanna-Barbera knew they had a winning cartoon formula on their hands, so they reworked the Scooby-Doo format again and again and again. From turning Scooby into Goober to the Funky Phantom in 1971, which featured 3 teens and their dog who accidentally released 2 ghosts. Then there was Clue Club in 1976, which tried to double the success by featuring 2 talking dogs, but failed to secure half as much interest. And they even switched out the dog companion for a giant shark in Jabberjaw, which aired in 1975. But this show flopped just as hard. Hanna-Barbera even resorted to rhyming to make its characters as popular as Scoob, with the new Shmoo launched in 1979. A show which featured a shape-shifting creature called Shmoo, which helps a gang of teens solve mysteries. But just like an off-brand Scooby snack, none of these shows captured the flavor of the original and were all canceled after 1 series. After all, there's only one Scooby-Dooby-Doo! Cocoa Butt. If I were to ask, who lives in a pineapple under the sea? Everyone knows the answer. It's SpongeBob SquarePants. The show about a happy-go-lucky sea sponge and his adventures with his sea life friends in Bikini Bottom. One of the most successful cartoon franchises of all time, having run for 13 seasons and sold over $13 billion in merchandise. Due to its incredible popularity, you just know that a ripoff was bound to happen at some point. And in 2006, Coconut Fred's Fruit Salad Island came along. Now, at first glance, you may give this show the benefit of the doubt and assume that it's an original concept. After all, it's about a coconut on a sandy island inhabited entirely by talking fruit characters. But between the tropical theme and Coconut Fred's constantly happy, childlike personality, it soon becomes clear that this is a SpongeBob ripoff. Coconut Fred is SpongeBob, if SpongeBob's personality was amped up to 10. But there's no moments of self-awareness or even a grumpy Squidward to put him in his place. This coconut is so annoying that even other characters on the show insult him. When asked about Coconut Fred, Wedgie, a talking lemon, says he's awake and he sounds dangerously friendly. The other characters are keen to avoid Coconut Fred at all costs, most likely because he spends the entire show terrorizing them. The show is based around Coconut Fred's ability to create whatever he imagines into reality, resulting in chaos for the other inhabitants of the island. Most of Coconut Fred's creations are based around puns, such as causing a root canal or a tropical storm. That sounds annoying. So annoying that even his voice actor hated him. Rob Paulsen was openly critical of the character, referring to the show as a shameless SpongeBob ripoff. Which begs the question, who even likes Coconut Fred? Well, considering the show was canceled after 13 episodes, the answer is likely no one. Maybe the show would have been more successful if the main character was a little more coconut shy. Oh god, those terrible puns are rubbing off on me. I'll be damned. Between The Walking Dead and The Last of Us, television is full of post-apocalyptic shows. But animating a post-apocalyptic society doesn't sound like the best idea for a kid's show. And yet, the imaginative setting of the Land of Ooh became a hit show. Following the adventures of Finn and his half-dog, a noodle buddy Jake, Adventure Time was one of Cartoon Network's hit shows, attracting 3 million viewers an episode. It was also critically acclaimed, winning 8 Primetime Emmy Awards during its 283-episode run from 2010 to 2018. With the series spawning tons of spin-off books, comics, and video games, it's no surprise it also manifested its own ripoff. Yeah, a Chinese animation known as The Legend of Lucky Pie. Both cartoons have similar animation styles, featuring sword-wielding, noodle-armed main characters who love fighting monsters and going on adventures, with Jake the dog and Lucky the horse both possessing body-morphing powers. Though while Jake can turn into any shape he wants, Lucky can only transform from an anthropomorphic upright horse to a classic four-legged horse. Another difference being that Lucky Pie's co-lead is an anthropomorphic owl known as Pie, though his design clearly resembles Finn, with his spiky head copying Finn's trademark hat. Pie also copies Finn's personality, being fiery when battling monsters, but shy around girls, though that may just be the universal rule of 12-year-old boys. Both shows also feature a zany cast of supporting characters based off of folklore and food, an obvious parallel between the two shows being Princess Bubblegum from Adventure Time and Strawberry Warrior from Lucky Pie. Lucky Pie even references Adventure Time's setting in it. While Adventure Time takes place in the land of Ooh, Lucky Pie is set in the world of Mushroom Star, a reference to the nuclear mushroom wars in Adventure Time that created the Land of Oo's post-apocalyptic society. Both shows feature themes of brotherly love, friendship, and courage to stand up for your beliefs. But while Adventure Time has a whole studio of animators crafting it, The Legend of Lucky Pie is a labor of love created by a group of independent Chinese animators. Tired of tacky mainstream Chinese cartoons, they developed the show without studio backing and secured much of their funding through fans on Patreon. And this tighter budget is reflected in the looser art style of the series. Whereas Adventure Time is known for its thin, polished, smooth lines, Lucky Pie's lines are thicker, wobblier, and have a hand-drawn quality to them. The show's appearance has more toned-down, earthly colors than Adventure Time's famous pastel rainbow aesthetic. And while this made it a kind of appealing homemade homage to Adventure Time, Lucky Pie only ran from 2015 to 2018, with 5 episodes produced in total. So these Chinese animators took Adventure Time and made their own version. In this case, it seems less of a blatant ripoff and more that imitation is the highest form of flattery. Celebrity lookalike. Take 4 random words that have no relation to one another. Mutant, teenage, turtle, ninja. They may sound like random hashtags of a TikToker trying to go viral, but mash them together and you have a hit show. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Without any context, it sounds incredibly dumb, but creators Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird made their wacky title work. The idea came about when the two comic artists were hanging out, and Kevin drew a turtle wearing a mask and holding a nunchaku. They found the contrast between the famously slow-moving reptile and the speed and agility of a ninja a funny mix. They developed the idea and created a 4-turtle team, each specializing in their own weapon. And so, Leonardo, Raphael, Donatello, and Michelangelo, named after the pair's favorite artists, were born. Starting as an indie comic book line in 1984 by Mirage Studios, 3 years later, the ingeniously innovative idea was adapted into a hugely popular cartoon. Set in New York City, the series follows the adventures of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles as they battle criminals, and reworked the original grittier comic book into a lighthearted, joke-filled cartoon show. By 1990, the series was shown daily on more than 125 television stations. Following the success of the cartoon, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was licensed to Playmates Toys, which produced a range of toys including 400 figures and playsets. And these toys were snapped up by kids with $1.1 billion worth of sales between 1988 and 1992. So, with this incredible success, it's no surprise that others tried to replicate the hit formula. All you need is a sci-fi adjective, a martial art, and an anthropomorphic animal. How hard could it be? Well, in 1990, the first rip-off show appeared: Samurai Pizza Cats. Ironically, this show was produced in Japan. The culture which had inspired the Ninja Turtles was now creating a similar franchise of their own. This time, switching out mutant ninja turtles for semi-cyborg samurai cats. And that wasn't the only idea they copied. The Ninja Turtles famously have a love of pizza, but the Samurai Cats took it a step further, as the show's characters worked at a pizzeria. To its credit, this cartoon didn't try to hide where its influences came from. In the very first episode, there's a mention of a retirement home for aging Ninja Turtles. An aged Mr. Turtleman even appears in the show's opening theme with a line saying, "They've got more fur than a turtle ever had." A fairly accurate, yet super lame put-down of the rival show. And if it wasn't obvious enough already, Mr. Turtleman even repeats the famous catchphrase of the Ninja Turtles, "Cowabunga." The cartoon leaned into its parodic nature, with plenty of self-referential jokes making fun of itself and the TMNT show, and even mocked other aspects of pop culture, with a character called Batcat, a reference to Batman. It was a cult hit among anime fans in Japan, and an English adaptation was even licensed for a release in North America. This series took its inspiration and made it its own. But it did help to open the gate to many other copycat shows. Case in point, Street Sharks, which sounds more like sharks flopping around on the street, not agile crime fighters. But this show solved that by leaning into the teenage mutant element to create its own show. While our favorite shelled ninjas transformed following exposure to radioactive ooze, the Street Sharks are the result of a gene slammer device, in which 4 teenage boys are transformed into reverse mermaids. Shark heads on top of human bodies. Instead of pursuing a life under the sea, the newly created shark hybrids fight crime, much like the Ninja Turtles. From 1994 to 1997, 3 series followed the adventures of Ripster, Jab, Streaks, and Big Slamu. The show copied the Turtles' love of extreme sports, with the shark heroes using skateboards, rollerblades, and motorbikes to travel around the city. But for all it copied, the Sharks never achieved the same success as the Turtles, though the show did launch its own toy line, combining toy sharks with some of the worst fashion trends of the 90s. Jeez, look at those sweatbands. But by far the laziest ripoff of the Ninja Turtles has to be the... Do I have to say this out loud? It's so dumb. Kung Fu Dino Posse. Released in 2009, almost 20 years late to the party, maybe they thought it had been so long people wouldn't realize it was a Ninja Turtles hack. Even the backstory was clumsily put together, as it featured a gang of 4 dinosaurs who were frozen in the last ice age, and after being thawed from ice resumed their kung fu skills to fight crime. Except the dinosaurs went extinct 66 million years ago, way before the world's ice ages. Furthermore, Kung Fu originated 4,000 years ago in ancient China, so according to the logic of the show, dinosaurs invented Kung Fu. But even if this was cartoon logic, kids didn't buy it. So just like the real dinosaurs, the show went extinct after only 1 season. But these are only a small selection of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles ripoffs, with other crime-fighting mutant animals ranging from cows in Wild West cowboys of Moo Mesa to dogs in Road Rovers, and even mice in the Biker Mice from Mars. Have you seen any of these shows? Let me know down in the comments. Or if you're a loyal fan of the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, then show your support by hitting that like button. Scapegoat. What's your goat to drink? Do you prefer Goatorade? Or maybe Goat Milkshake? Has my subliminal messaging tempted you to try goat's milk? Probably not, as goat milk hardly sounds appetizing, making it a hard sell. But if you want to sell things to kids, a great way to do it is through a cartoon. Bright, colorful, and fun, kids will buy anything if it's made into animated form. And so, a Chinese food company, Sanyuan Food, decided to promote their brand of goat milk, Miracle Star, through a cartoon. The weird, wonderful, and delightful Star. Though creating an original cartoon is hard, so this company took a shortcut and completely ripped off the amazing world of Gumball. The Cartoon Network show, which first aired in 2011 to 2019, revolves around the anthropomorphic cat Gumball and his adventures with his adopted brother Darwin, a goldfish with legs. Now, that's a sentence I never thought I'd say. But the rest of Gumball's family is just as random, as it involves his bunny sister Anais, and his stay-at-home rabbit dad. Meanwhile, the delightful Star series follows the anthropomorphic goat named Kiki, who has a talking pet frog referred to as Quack, who lives with him in his family's apartment. Both of Kiki's parents are goats, but there's no little sister figure, an eerie reference to China's one-child policy. But while Miracle Star may have species-swapped the animals, the art style and direction itself is a near shot-for-shot exact copy of Gumball. And just take a look at these side-by-side scenes. The set design is identical, with the characters performing the same actions. The creators of Miracle Star didn't even bother to write their own storylines, rather just copied and pasted scripts from Gumball. The Miracle Star series aired from 2014 to 2017, with a total of 12 episodes broadcast before being canceled due to negative reviews. Unsurprisingly, Miracle Star didn't capture the same charm of the original Gumball. And with righteous catitude, the original Amazing World of Gumball actually addressed the controversial ripoff in the most entertaining way possible. They released an episode called The Copycats, where Gumball and Darwin are confused when they meet a goat called Chi-Chi and a frog named Ribbit, a pair of siblings that copy everything the pair say and do. Then they discover that this copycat family is making money online from imitating them, so at least Gumball got the last laugh. Which of these terrible rip-off shows did you think was the worst? And on the flip side, are there any counterfeit shows you thought might be better than the original? Let me know in the comments, and thanks for watching.